the name Preserving Life. This means that he is active for the rights of animals worldwide, particularly for the right to life, also for animals. Welcome, Gert. I also greet very warmly Barbara Rütting. She is a former actress, peace activist, animal protector, and as a member of the Bavarian Parliament, learned that she could accomplish little for animals on a parliamentary level, so she resigned from her seat in Parliament, and today she again works for the protection of man, animal, and environment, but no longer as a member of Parliament. Welcome, Barbara.
Yes, thank you.
And then we have Johannes Hofer, also an attorney who has deeply concerned himself with the topic of animals and has done a lot of research on the relationship between man and animal. Welcome, Johannes. Well, before we start talking about a better future, let's throw some light on the present. Hans-Jörg, during your professional career, you gained much insight into what animals experience with people and through people. Can you describe some of your experiences?
Yes. About 35 years ago, I decided to study veterinarian medicine purely out of an idealism to help animals and to give them a worthy life. But after my studies, I had to realize very quickly that this idealism cannot be realized in my profession. For example, I've seen in agriculture, in businesses that I looked after in my profession, that animals are merely a means to an end. For instance, concerning how cows are kept in small farms, I've seen that these animals are constantly tied up their whole life long, that they live in barns with high humidity because there is not enough straw, or because of the quality of feed, or also a lack of hygiene, so that the animals are constantly dirty with large clumps of fur hanging on their coats. On the larger farms, where the animals can move around, they don't have a much better life either. They live on totally unsuitable flooring, on split flooring, so that their excrement, the dung and urine, fall away from the animals as quickly as possible. However, they are constantly exposed to the stench, to the decomposition odor of this excrement. And because of this faulty flooring, the animals often have hoof problems. They live in cold barns, in stinking barns. They don't even know what the wind is, for example. They don't know what sunlight as such means. The farmers see to it that animals that are kept as dairy cows are constantly pregnant or have young, because a cow without a calf doesn't produce any milk.
So cows don't give milk automatically.
Cows don't give milk automatically. They give milk only when they have offspring. The milk serves to rear the calves, and when they don't have any, the organism automatically stops producing milk. But the fact is that the calves are taken away from their mothers right after birth, so that a normal life between mother and child is not possible at all. And instead of being reared on the milk that the mothers produce, the calves are given substitute milk, and the milk from the cows is used for human consumption.
This means that these were conditions that you experienced, that you observed over the years, in which you were also involved to the point where you then said, I cannot accept this, and then took the resultant steps. But we'll talk about that later. Barbara, during the 1970s and 80s, you found your way to a vegetarian diet and have even written vegetarian cookbooks. Can you describe what your key experience was and how you came to a vegetarian diet. Was it the conditions in factory farming? Were you in a slaughterhouse, or what was it?
There were actually two reasons. The first was that I developed rheumatism at age 30, inherited from my mother, so it was said, and I was supposed to take a lot of medications till the end of my life. Then I inquired, can't I also deal with this by changing my diet? And so it was. I changed my diet to vegetarian whole foods. That's very important. It has to be whole foods, and I got my rheumatism under control. But the second aspect was that I moved to the countryside onto a farm, and then I could experience the animals close up, which I had never really done before. I had a pair of bantam chickens, Mr. and Mrs. Nebbich, and I could no longer imagine them on a spit. Awful! And the neighbor's lambs, Gustle's lambs, I could no longer picture as an Easter lamb with green beans. So in short, these two things came together. I changed my diet slowly, and I would recommend this to everyone who strives for this. Don't proceed too strictly, too radically, because then relapses are pre-programmed. Proceed with gentle, small steps. And I have really never regretted it. My life has become so much better since then. I now feel, and I'm almost 85, better than I did at 30.
Now, you were an actress, a very popular actress, but you drew a line and ended your career. Can you briefly tell us why?
Well, the awful thing was we wore fur coats, and back then there were frogs' legs, which, however, I did not eat, but all that was eaten. And then I asked myself, what am I actually doing here? My career became less and less important because the work in the peace movement, I was very active there, became more and more important. And then there was animal protection. And I also made exactly the same experience. I saw the factory farms, more on television, but also had a look at what was happening on the farms, how the pigs were kept on the very normal farms. And I also came to the realization, but only a year ago, that not even a vegetarian diet is enough, but that I must become a vegan. So not only that vegetarians don't eat anything from dead animals, but still from living ones. There are dairy products, eggs, milk, and cream, of course, and that, with this, I also, as Hans-Jörg said here, support animal suffering. Cows have to have calves which are torn away from their crying mothers. So I then realized that I now have to take the step to become vegan. But I also have to say that here I recommend to all vegetarians, all those who are becoming vegetarians, the raw food eaters, who then quarrel about who does it right, to go gently. Not everyone proceeds in quantum leaps. Some do at a snail's pace. Let us be mild with those who are not yet as far as we think we are, so proceed gently. That would be my suggestion.
And so that means that you have always worked for the protection of animals as well as for people. They always were linked together for you, and this has continued for you until today. Gert, I would be interested. You are a co-founder of this association, Preserving Life, but in your professional career as attorney, I think you've had hardly anything to do with animals. What moved you to stand up for animals and to become active for animals?
Well, it really was a long way. I grew up in a large city, was very technically oriented, and as we just heard, hardly anyone knows what really goes on with animals. There are whole regions, as for example in Bavaria, in Lower Franconia, where you never see an animal at all. They're all kept concealed, you could almost say in dark and airtight barns. And you don't learn what goes on there. Also, for example, what goes on during slaughter, how cruel it is. I once had the chance, during my studies, I was in an internship with the city, and there you also went into the slaughterhouse. And another student and I couldn't even go in there because already at the entrance there were eyes rolling around the floor. That would have been the first chance for me to wake up. I still ate meat for a long time, but then later, out of ethical reasons, I came up against questions of life on the whole, that the divine life in man and in the animals is the same life. I also realized that you can very well kill everything, but no human being can create life. Why then is he allowed to go after animals? But also decisive for me, similarly as Barbara, was the fact that I was able to live on a farm for some time and came into contact with animals there. And I noticed that these so feared big bulls, for example,